All right. Big Ten play is back. That means another big banter crossover. I'm SpartanDog 97 of the Bacon Warrior podcast. We cover MSU football and basketball. And we have on Alec Crouthamel to discuss Rutgers. Alec, welcome. Alec, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Should be a good game this weekend.
Yeah, so I want to do this off the top. I want to do this first and foremost. There's been a lot of tension between the MSU and Rutgers fan bases over a certain verbiage that our former head coach liked to use. So I would just like to take this time off the top as a peace offering to you, to the Rutgers fan base. Chopping, keep chopping, whatever. That's all yours. You can take it all back. You might want to wash it first, but you can have it. It's all yours.
Well, trust me, I know that Greg Schiano loves to just pound it into all of our heads. So I think it's gotten plenty of wash ever since Mel Tucker decided to try and use it.
Okay, no, but I'm talking like literally, like wash it. You don't know where it's been. So, do that thing that industrial workers' wives do. Strip it with like an Arm and Hammer. Yeah, do that stuff. Rutgers is 4-2.
Yeah,
Rutgers is 4-2, but more importantly, they're 6-0 against the spread. And the old verbiage, good teams win, great teams cover. What has kind of been the driving force behind this Rutgers team this year in the fourth year of the second Schiano era?
Yeah, it's been a lot of just controlling the ball. Another verbiage that Schiano loves is the ball is the program, which means, keep it in our hands as much as possible and take it away from them as much as possible. So they've really flipped the script in terms of time of possession. It's been a big emphasis, especially thanks to Kirk Shiraka, the new offensive coordinator, or I guess new old offensive coordinator because he was here for a year. But yeah, that's been a big part of it. The defense is still growing to become one of the better units, not just in the Big Ten, but in the whole country. According to The Athletic, they are 10th in the country in stop rate, which is, I think, how they qualify, preventing points and causing fourth downs. So, yeah, it's that. And the offense has just taken a step forward in terms of play calling and execution under Shiraka. So a lot of that has now, granted, they haven't played the best teams, but a lot of that has led to this start where, they didn't play great teams last year, but they looked really shaky pretty much all season. But now they're really starting to settle in and play well, even against teams that, Michigan and Wisconsin, the two losses, they were in the game for most of it.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think, as someone who watched that Michigan game, you could see that Rutgers kind of competed against Michigan in a way that I don't really think they have since they beat Michigan in 2014. So that was definitely an impressive outing. So, going into this game, right, you have an opportunity here to kind of get bowl eligible here. And then, the season kind of ramps up dramatically in terms of difficulty. Are you thinking in terms of like just win these two games and then, just take the lumps the rest of the season? Or are you kind of looking, I guess, at a bit of a higher ceiling for Rutgers this year?
Me personally, I've kind of been on the train of just get to 6 wins, and I have predicted that they were going to get 6 wins since pretty much like the off season, and I still think that because I mean, like you said, the November schedule, it's ugly. It gets real ugly. You got Ohio State at home, and then you're at Iowa, and then you're at Penn State, and then you're at home against Maryland to close it out. That's not easy. So these two games are going to be huge. Iowa, I don't want to say they could be a win because they're still tremendous defensively, but I mean, their offense does not look any better, and they lost Cade McNamara, so that could potentially be a toss-up depending on how Deacon Hill does. But yeah, I've basically been on the train of let's get the 6 wins, and I think they will get the 6 wins. So after that, it's like it would be nice to see them. I want to see them at least be competitive for a little bit in every single remaining game. But as long as they get the 6 wins, I'll be happy with where they've gone.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I guess this is a question I have a little more interest in generally. This isn't specific to this season, but because if Michigan State, if Michigan State fucks up here, no offense, but we could definitely be kind of in the Rutgers tier of the new Big Ten. So I guess like, where do you like? How do you do it? I guess is the question. How have you done it? How have you been able to kind of come back week after week, year after year, with I'm a lot. Listen, I'm a Detroit Lions fan, and I don't get it. So I guess that's an anthropological question. I'm more interested in generally.
It was not easy. It was not easy taking the lumps that we did after first getting into the Big Ten conference. It was not easy. They started out really strong. The first couple of seasons were pretty good. You get to 8 wins your first season in the Big Ten. That's a success. 2015 took a bit of a step back, but I'm sure, as Rutgers almost took down Michigan State in that game.
Yep.
They looked pretty good. But then towards the end of that season, things kind of fell apart. They kind of did an overhaul of pretty much all the big name sports, at least. Eddie Jordan got fired in March of that year, and then in December they fired Julie Herman and Kyle Flood, the AD and football coach. So things were supposed to get a bit of a fresh start, and for the most part, it worked. I mean, obviously, Steve Peichel has been a home run hire. Pat Hobbs has done great work as the athletic director, but the big mistake was Chris Ash, and that was apparent almost immediately because it was a disaster. It wasn't easy. I'll tell you that. It was not easy, but getting Greg Schiano back, he's just preached his vision and that, he's done it before, he can do it again the entire time. So it's like, kind of have no choice but to believe in him because he has that experience doing it at Rutgers. But the Ash years, it was not good. It was not easy to stay engaged. But now that Greg Schiano's back, he's selling us on the vision. And I think he's, at the very least right now, I think he's bringing it to the table. So now it's just a matter of where can he go from here? Because it seems like, they're close to just being like a regular, average Big Ten team. And that's kind of a lot of what Rutgers fans want instead of being, the doormat and the laughing stock of the entire country. Just be in contention for things like, go win 7 or 8 games every year, maybe pull a shocking upset, maybe just beat Purdue under Jeff Brom, what they were, 7, 8 games a year you win, and then pull a shocker against Ohio State every so often. That's kind of like the target for where Rutgers can be in the Big Ten. And I think they're making momentum towards that.
Gotcha. And I guess like, the Big East football conference, I think is, along with the Pac-12, I think was just one of the most unfortunate victims of realignment. And like, I guess like in this Big Ten era, who does Rutgers kind of perceive as a rival, right? Because you don't have the rivalries from the Big East didn't carry over, obviously. So like, who's like Rutgers' chief rival?
Honestly, it kind of depends who you ask. If you ask those guys up in Chicago in the conference offices, they'll say Maryland. They're really trying to make it a thing. We only have one protected rival in the new scheduling, and it's Maryland. So they're really trying to make it a thing because, it's the closest school to Rutgers and join the conference at the same time. So they're trying to really be like, it's the new guys against each other, that kind of thing. So if you ask the Big Ten office, it would be Maryland. If you ask students, it's Penn State, although I don't necessarily agree because Penn State, A, beats us all the time, B, doesn't even think about us in football. So that's kind of out the window. It's really been tough. It feels like, I don't know, at least in football, it feels like Michigan State's kind of been a rivalry, but mostly that just came from the fact that Mel Tucker decided to, use the same phrase Schiano had started using in 2005. But in all sports, it's kind of Indiana because Indiana fans were one of the loudest proponents of kicking Rutgers out of the conference. And then that came that 3-4 year stretch where they could not beat Rutgers in any sports. That kind of sparked a rivalry on its own. So it's kind of just depending on who you ask.
Interesting. I mean, that's something I never really think of either because, for better or worse, my rivalries have kind of been set in stone at both levels, right? It's always fuck the Packers, fuck the Bears, fuck Michigan, fuck Ohio State, but that's more of a begrudging, like, if you want to get to Indy, you have to go through them kind of thing. But, I've never really been, one of my teams has never been really out in the wilderness of MSU fans. that Rutgers fans are. So that's an interesting perspective. So I want to ask about Gavin Wimsatt, your quarterback. He is a guy who one has a great head of hair under the helmet. I mean, just the his look will always play for me. I'll just say that off the top. And two, I was able to watch a little bit of the Wisconsin game, not a ton, but it seems like he does not do very well when is sitting in the pocket. He seems to thrive in chaos. Is that an accurate assessment?
I would say it's a little bit accurate, I guess. It definitely feels like he's better when things are starting to break down. He's able to get himself into space and, try to make a play with his arm or his legs. I think the biggest reason why he kind of struggles to stay in the pocket is because flat out his accuracy is just probably his biggest weakness. He struggles to just place the ball well, especially, over the middle when he needs to have touch. Those are the things he struggles the most in. So it's probably most apparent when he's just sitting in the pocket and throwing without, pressure in his face. So Kirk Ciarrocca has definitely tried to make his life easier by doing a lot of, underneath routes, a lot of not exactly over the middle, but, get guys outside, just give him easy throws to make and see if he can hit them. Wisconsin, it felt like it was a little bit windy out there. I wasn't at the game, but it seemed like it was a little bit windy out there and he was just missing targets. But it definitely seems like he's at his best when it's a option / RPO heavy scheme where he can make plays and get into space. That seems like where he, looks the best. It feels like, honestly, he has a great arm regardless, but it feels like his throw on the run power is one of the better ones that I've seen. And granted, for Rutgers quarterbacks, there's not a very high bar to clear, but it seems like he has a lot of talent in that regard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would tend to agree there. He definitely, once he's able to kind of get on a naked boot, I think is when he's the most dangerous, when he's able to kind of roll out, be able to kind of see the field, and then he can kind of make a decision. I guess kind of, the floor is yours to ask anything about Michigan State that you want. So go ahead. I have a lot of things to say, obviously, if you follow Bacon Wire on Twitter during game days, but anything you want to know about MSU, shoot, I'll be happy to provide insight.
First, I guess the elephant in the room, I guess. What's on the fallout of everything that's gone on the past, I guess, month and a half or so? What's the general vibe around the program like right now?
They could not be worse. Listen, it's really frustrating because, of all fucking people, Tom Mars, who I don't know if people outside of these Michigan State fan bases know who Tom Mars is, but he's an attorney in Michigan. He basically represented the players he represented the Michigan players involved in the tunnel fight. He has a lot of thoughts about Michigan State. Not all of them good, but the blind squirrel found a nut, and he brought up a good point. The shame is, right, the closest you can compare this scandal to is Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, right? I think that's the closest analog you can make. This is worse than what Hugh Freeze did. I'll say that. Just optically and both like morally, it's worse. But the administration went to Hugh Freeze. I'm assuming they did the same. I'm assuming Alan Haller went to Mel Tucker and said, "Look, you can resign, or we have enough to fire you with cause." And resigning saved Hugh Freeze's career. He was able to rehab his image at Liberty, and now he's back in a Power 5 job. It's pretty clear that Mel Tucker is intent on never coaching again, just based on the approach he's taking and the way he's choosing to fight this firing, and it's causing a lot of drama around the program, and it's really unfortunate because the kids don't deserve it.
Yeah, exactly. That's on, in my view, that's the biggest losers of this whole thing are, the players themselves, because I mean, they didn't ask for this to happen to them. They didn't want this to happen at all. So it really does. I mean, I really do feel for them. So they've moved on from Tucker. Now they have Harlan Bennett as the interim coach. How do you think he's done so far since he's taken over?
If I had to grade him, I'd probably give him a D. And here's why. You look, they were never going to beat Washington. Even if the whole thing didn't come out and Mel Tucker was still head coach and there was stability in the program, that Washington game was going to go the way the Washington game went. They're a buzzsaw. I'm the voter for the big banter ballot. I've had Washington at number 1 in the country for most of the season. I think if they beat Oregon, I think a lot of people will kind of see the vision with me.
Okay, I'm not the only one that has them in the top 3. That's good to know.
Yeah, no, I think they're one of I've seen a lot of people compare them to 2019 LSU. I think their defense is a little weaker than 2019 LSU's team. I think that might end up biting them here. If it's not this week, it's going to be it down the road. But no, that offense is unbelievable. But they made bad personnel decisions to start the season, and they have doubled and tripled down on those personnel decisions. And that's doing more harm than good at this point. And, they don't really care. They're not going to be here next year anyway. So there's really no incentive to break a kid's heart and do what's best for the short and long term of a program you're not going to be employed by. Why do they care? So, ultimately, Harlan was the right guy for the job. He deeply cares about Michigan State. If his tenure at Florida State had gone differently, he probably would have D'Antonio probably would have held on for a couple more years and it would have handed off to Harlan. At least that's what D'Antonio wanted. But yeah, the doubling down on the personnel decisions that were wrong for the jump have not helped.
So you mentioned some of those personnel decisions. So it seems like people know, but nobody is publicly knowing who's going to go at quarterback, probably the most important one. It seems like the consensus is everyone kind of feels like it's going to be Caden.
Caden Hauser. Yeah,
Caden Hauser. That's his name. Yeah, sorry, it escaped me for a second. So it seems like people kind of know it's going to be Caden Hauser, but Bennett and his staff don't really want to reveal it just for the sake of competitive advantage, which I have plenty of experience with. Greg Schiano always wants to get a competitive advantage, never tells anyone anything. So is that what the consensus kind of is, that Noah Kim is done as the starter and Hauser's going to take over?
So people in the know, that seems to be the consensus right now is that they're going to move forward with Caden Hauser. And again, I don't trust this staff as far as I can throw them. I've talked about this, in our discussion when it was just the bacon wire guys talking about it. I am cautiously optimistic that they finally made the good decision. And, unfortunately, it's not all Noah Kim's fault that the season's going the way it's going. They've been put in bad positions by their coaches, and ultimately, the kids have to answer for that, which is a shame. But it's just been very clear since they started playing Power 5 competition that Noah Kim is not a viable option as a quarterback. He did well against Central Michigan and against Richmond, but that's probably the level he should be at if we're keeping it between you and me. And it's just a shame that they've kept him out there and kind of wrecked his confidence and are now publicly benching him in the most excruciating way possible, in my opinion. And, that's the shame of it, and the staff again failing these kids.
And I guess if we talk more about broad in general. So Michigan State obviously has to hire a coach in the offseason, whether it's Bennett, whether it's someone else. Who would you want in the dream scenario Michigan State to hire for full time?
So I don't know if you've been paying attention to Michigan State Twitter, Alec, but there's been rumblings. And unfortunately, I have banned discussion of this from Bacon Wire. But because this is going on What's Chopping as well, I guess I can kind of give myself an exemption here. There's been some rumblings about Urban Meyer, And, honestly, like, I've kind of outlined the positive and negatives of an Urban Meyer tenure at Michigan State. But he's definitely on my list. I mean, I can't see how he wouldn't be if on anyone's list, honestly. But outside of him, I really like Mike Elko at Duke. I think I'm interested to see what he does now that Riley Leonard is kind of going to be down for an extended period of time, to see how he adapts, and that's going to tell a lot about what kind of coach he is and how he's able to how he's kind of capable to answer to different situations. I also really love Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. It's going to be tough because it's his alma mater, so you really don't know like how he's going to respond to that. But Oregon State is one of the unfortunate victims of one of the more unfortunate victims of realignment. So if they're going to be kind of competing in the Mountain West, it's really going to, I think that's really going to test his loyalty, and we can kind of see him move on and take over another state school, which would be cool. But those are my top three right now.
There is one name that I've seen pop up at some points that it seems like Michigan State fans are united against. A friend of mine from the Rutgers side put it out as a possibility, and he got ratioed to oblivion by Michigan State fans. On a scale of never to also never, how out are you on Michigan State potentially hiring Pat Narduzzi from Pitt?
I would storm the football building. I would. There are a lot of things that I might be pushed to do if Michigan State hired Pat Narduzzi that I cannot speak aloud, especially on a recorded medium. Listen, people are floating Pat Narduzzi because they were working the Michigan State beat when he was here as defensive coordinator, and they like him and they want him to get the Michigan State job because they want access. And two, they're lazy. They don't pay attention. And they just go, oh, he was at Michigan State. He can come home. Right? Here's the thing with Pat Narduzzi. Okay. There was an opening 3 years ago at this school, and he was not even interviewed. That's the facts. He was not even considered a viable candidate in 2020. And that was when he kind of earned himself a reputation as a giant slayer, right? Like he beat those Clemson teams with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, and he kind of put Pitt kind of back on the map a little bit. And even then he wasn't considered for the job. Now he's coming off back-to-back. He had a disappointing season last year. This season is a fucking disaster. He has a comment. He put up a comment box. I don't know if you saw this. He put up a comment box in the front of the building for players to put in their negative thoughts. So Pat Narduzzi, I think would set the program back 15 years. Wow.
All right. Well, I was very curious about this, so it's very good that I got a gauge on that. So, yeah, I mean, Urban Meyer would be really. I think the report of him being interested might have gotten like disputed. I don't know how accurate that was, but I mean, yeah, the pros and cons are pretty clear. The pros are he's a damn good football coach. He's won everywhere he's went. The cons are he is an extreme flight risk, and it would be a PR nuclear bomb if they hired him.
See, here's the thing. I'm not really, and I said this last week on the episode when we got it all out of our system. See, I'm not really interested in doing things because it's going to grant Michigan State positive or negative PR, especially on the local beat. A lot of people in the Big Ten don't really understand what this is like because they don't have another in-state program to kind of look at. But the perception of Michigan State, I think, is not going to change if we hire a choir boy, and it's really not going to get any worse if we hire Urban Meyer. So, I just want to see a decision made because this person is the right man for the job and can get MSU, to where it wants to be, and not that like he's going to be a good, upstanding man, because that was part of the perception that got Mel Tucker hired, and look how that turned out. So, at least what you're getting with Urban, and at least depending on who you ask, Shelley is also down to clown. So that that's my thing with Urban. My biggest thing is that my biggest concerns with Urban are that his heart sucks. He has one of the worst, he basically has a ticking time bomb in his chest. And this is going to be one of his most extensive rebuilds, probably his most extensive rebuild since Utah. It's not something he's had to do in a while. I think the NIL stuff is overblown because he was doing NIL before NIL was legal, so it's fine. But Urban, it is what it is, but there's definitely other candidates out there that are currently coaches that wouldn't, invoke ire from the national media.
Yeah, so that's kind of all I got in terms of a a broader scale for Michigan State. So I guess we can talk a little bit more about this weekend's game. It's going to be a big one, homecoming. In case you did not know, our entire 2024 commit class is showing up. Actually, minus Dylan Grain, who couldn't come because of scheduling conflict, I believe. But Ace Bailey's going to be on campus, Bryce Dortch and Lathan Somerville, as well as one guy that you may be familiar with from the home state of Michigan, Trey McKinney, a 5-star in 2025, as well as, of course, Dylan Harper, the well-known 5-star in 2024. So it's a big weekend for Rutgers. They kind of have to win this game for basketball and football purposes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did not know that this was going to be a big recruiting weekend for them. That's interesting. Look, for Michigan State is just as important of a win because I went over it previously, but this game can be the difference between bowl eligibility and 3-9 for MSU, and there's really not going to be any kind of middle here. So their backs are against the wall. It took them a long time, but they finally made the right decision, and I'm interested to see how they move forward.
Yeah, so with that coming up on Saturday, I guess we can make some of our predictions, what we think will happen, what we think we'll see. So I guess first question is, what do you think is going to be the biggest key to a Michigan State win? Then I can give mine for Rutgers.
To me, the biggest key for a Michigan State win is you got to keep Gavin Wimsatt in front of you, right? You got to be able to make him make the play in structure, right? And if you allow him to kind of get out, scramble, kind of get on his feet, cause the play to break down, that's just not going to be a winning formula for you. But if you let him sit in the pocket, read the field, you might be able to kind of read him. You might be able to make a break on a route because he's kind of staring someone down, or he might just overthink it and over or under throw because he's like, I'm used to kind of being out and about and kind of scrambling. So I think that's the important thing is no pressure. I think on Gavin Wimsatt is a little better than pressure, right? Keeping him from escaping the pocket is going to be the biggest key for Michigan State in order to win this game.
I think for Rutgers, I guess I'll go one on offense, one on defense because I'm kind of torn which one is bigger. For offense, it's going to be getting the run game back on track. They struggled again against Wisconsin, really could not get it going. Kyle Monangai got 8 carries. Gavin Wimsatt led the team in rushing again. I believe he had like 40-something yards. So establishing the run game again with Kyle Monangai and maybe Sam Brown. Honestly, I don't know what to expect from Sam Brown because it feels like he's still dealing with that, either the same foot injury or maybe a different one that he dealt with last year. And it's kind of day by day of how it goes with him. That's what it seems like to me, at least. So getting that run game going is going to be big. They have the guys to do it. I mean, granted, it was Wagner, an FCS opponent, a bad FCS opponent, but I mean, we saw everyone on the field. Kyle Monangai got carries, Sam Brown got carries, Jashawn Benjamin, the true freshman, got carries, Aaron Young, the senior, got carries. So it's going to be a collective effort for all 4 of them to get this run game going. And on defense, I think it's going to be, get pressure on the quarterback and force mistakes. Obviously, win the turnover battle. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you win the turnover battle, get short fields for your offense, you win the game. And like I said, Greg Schiano loves preaching the ball is the program. So I think those are my two biggest keys for a Rutgers win, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with you. Depending on who starts on Saturday. Like I said, I don't trust this staff, so you could very well get Noah Kim out there on Saturday, and he's been turnover prone against Power 5 competition. So definitely, the turnover battle is going to be important. I guess my final thought here is I don't know what my final thought is. Actually, I just blanked. I guess my final question for you, Alec, is this: with the Big Ten, with these new teams coming into the Big Ten, do you expect a shift in expectations one way or the other for Rutgers?
It's tough because the schedule definitely gets easier. The 2024 schedule got a huge boost from the changing of it. That went from having to play the entire Big Ten East and then swap Indiana with UCLA. So thankfully that's out. They don't play Michigan State, Ohio State, or Penn State in 2024. It's tough to gauge where the expectations will be because they're bringing in four really good programs. Like we're seeing this year, USC, Oregon, and Washington are all top 10 teams, and UCLA is kind of creeping on the edge of that top 25 status. So it's tough to say. I think expectations will rise as just getting to that 7 or 8 wins every year as like the goal because they don't have a guaranteed 3 losses on their schedule every year. Now they'll still play really good teams, but it's not like years past where it's set in stone. All right, you got to go against Ohio State, you got to go against Michigan, you got to go against Penn State. All right, that's 3 losses already on the schedule. Now we got 9 games to work with that could go either way. So it's tough to gauge where the expectations will be, but I think it's going to be continue to grow as a program and just be a good, above an average to good Big Ten team year in year out. I think that's the expectation in general.
No, absolutely. And, I think MSU also lucked out with their 2024 schedule. They do have to go to Eugene, but you look otherwise. I think avoiding the other 3 newcomers and getting the lion's share of the old Big Ten West, I think is the best situation that you can put a new coach in. I think moving forward. So I'm definitely I'm looking I'm looking forward to Saturday out of a morbid curiosity. And I'm looking forward to the future. Alec, thank you for sitting down with me and discussing, man. It's been great. We can, do you want to plug each other real quick?
Yeah, sure. And although I guess before we go, we should probably ask each other for score predictions for Saturday first.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm not in the prediction game. I don't know. I see so much is up in the air. If Hauser starts, see, here's what's gonna happen. And no offense to you, but MSU's gonna win by Hauser's gonna start, MSU's gonna win by 10. The naivete, the fan base is gonna be at an all-time high going into Michigan. And then we're just gonna get curb stopped, and then the game's gonna get called because some walk on like Shiv's Blake Corum or something. It's gonna get really stupid. So like if Hauser starts, I'll go MSU by 10.
All right. I guess if we're going on to the expectation that Hauser starts, I think I'll go with 24-20 Rutgers. I think Rutgers holds the ball long enough that they can just, it's going to be close, but they can just edge him out. So I think that's my prediction for Saturday on what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Both of those things are equally likely. It's just because who knows. Alec, where can the people find you?
So for the What's Choppin' podcast, you can find us on all podcasting platforms at the What's Choppin' podcast. That includes Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, YouTube, all that fun stuff. And then for me personally, my Twitter is at AlexCR12. So if you want to follow me for a bunch of Rutgers stuff there, definitely, I post a lot of Rutgers stuff, maybe too much, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's where you can find me. Where can we all find you?
Yeah, so Bacon Wire, again, wherever you find podcasts. We are on Twitter at Bacon Wire. I live tweet every football and basketball game. My co-host Lucas will jump in sometimes as well. You can definitely tell who's tweeting because there is a definite style. You can find me at SpartanDog97. I also tweet about MSU. I tweet about the Lions. Oh, I have my final thought. When you came on, your Google Meet logo was a Seahawks helmet. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm from New Jersey, not from Seattle. I've been there once. Great time. But so my uncle used to live in Seattle, and my dad would always bring me this like cool stuff when I was a little kid, and that's kind of how it just when you're like when you're like 10 years old, when you're like 9 or 10 years old, it's like not a lot goes through your head when you're choosing sports teams. It's just like, oh, my parents like this team, or oh, this team's close to me, or wow, this team looks cool. So that's kind of how my origin story started, and people are going to call me a bandwagon, but it kind of coincided when they started winning. Like, I think my first year of actually like liking the team was Pete Carroll's first year, so it helps. It's definitely helped. But yeah, that's kind of my start as a Seahawks fan.
Yeah, there's been an interesting kind of rivalry emerging between the Seahawks and the Lions here, as both are kind of the Seahawks reascending the ranks of the NFC and the Lions ascending. There's been some good games between them the last couple of years here. But before I got distracted, I'm on Twitter at SpartanDog97. Tweet about the Lions and MSU and Bacon Wire wherever you can find podcasts. Thanks for sitting down with me, Alec. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a great time, and yeah, let's hope for a good game on Saturday.
Absolutely.